Welcome back to my channel, guys. In today's video, I am going to be reflecting on my year. The word that I picked at the beginning of this year was unity. I said in my video last year that I really don't like picking a word or making a New Year's resolution because the Lord always changes what He thinks that I need to work on. So if I had to pick a word that described this year, it would 100% be refinement. And you will see that through everything that I talk about in today's video, the Lord has really worked on my heart and just purified my spirit. The first thing that He taught me was that our character develops over time and our gifts also develop over time. I would often compare myself to people that have like an evangelistic gift and can just go out and tell anyone about the gospel, but that is just not personally how I naturally am. And so I would be like, why can't I just do that? And I realized that I don't naturally have an evangelistic gift, but it is still a command in the Bible to tell people about the gospel. And so I feel like the Lord is still able to use me, but just in different ways than He uses people that have a natural evangelistic gift. At the beginning of this year, I did a Daniel fast because our church always does a 21-day fast. And so I really felt led to do the Daniel fast because it's not the most easy thing. It's basically like a vegan diet on top of a gluten-free diet, and it is biblical. I decided that I was going to do that, and it was very difficult, but from that experience I learned that sometimes when you're fasting from things, you're not going to have a huge revelation. For the first few weeks of my fast, I didn't really feel any different, but the biggest difference was that I was obeying the Lord and what I thought that He was calling me to. It also helped me to deny my natural desires and desire Him more, so I was getting hungry for the Lord more just as I got hungry for food. This also helped me a lot with other sin issues that I was experiencing in my life because it gave me a lot of self-control, discipline, reliance on the Lord, obedience, and that really helped me in every single area of my life when I struggled with any other type of sin. Through the fast, my time spent with the Lord in the Word and worship and prayer just became more fulfilling because I was fasting from that food, and that is a result of fasting that we see in the Bible. And it also taught me to not grumble when I have to fast. In Matthew, it talks about how we should do everything with a joyful heart without grumbling, and that really was a test to that because I tend to complain about things sometimes, and that helped me become more aware of that. The next thing that I learned was the importance of doing my daily devotionals when no one is around. Sometimes that can literally be impossible when I'm in college because I have a roommate and I like to study in my room. And there's not really a lot of places where there aren't a lot of people, which is like a whole separate thing about college. You just don't have a lot of alone time. But I kind of started thinking in my head when I was studying the Bible around others, one, do they think I'm doing this for show? And two, if I am doing it for show, then that is a pride issue. I wanted to cherish the time that I spent with the Lord more. And so I felt like being around people when I studied the Word just wasn't for me. And I was constantly worried about like what other people were thinking around me rather than like actually spending my time with the Lord. It allowed my time with God to be more enjoyable, and I was more focused because I didn't have the distractions of my surroundings. And it also helped me realize that our time that we get to spend with God is a gift and it is not something to flaunt around. The next thing that I learned was to allow God into my studying and exam periods. Since I am a student, I am spending a lot of my time studying, and so I didn't really know how to bring God into that every single day. I have picked up the habit of praying while I'm doing my school homework problems, praying for God to equip me before I take an exam and just while I'm studying, and also while I'm taking the exam I will pray before and then I'll pray during. Ask Him to just help me through that and help me remember something that I don't know. And sometimes that doesn't always work. Obviously, we're still humans, and that is just a constant reminder that when I get something wrong on an exam, I am limited in my understanding. God has just blown me away in the amount that He has done through my studying, and I really can say that I have never done better in my classes than when I'm praying about it. And it has really been life-changing to just bring God along in everything that I'm doing and include Him in my studies. The next one was just obedience in general, and a specific example that I wanted to share with you guys is that I have been led to do worship for so long. I have felt a calling to do this for probably coming up around 2 years now, and I just stepped into that calling over the summer. My friend Aiden asked me to lead a worship night with him for our friend group, and so I did that with him, and I absolutely loved it. I was really scared at first, and I was honestly just hesitant in general with joining worship because I just had doubts of like, oh, I'm not as good as other people and whatever else came to my mind. But I knew that that's where the Lord wanted me, and I know that I've had a passion for singing for so long, and I'm just so happy that I like finally stepped into that calling. And then I joined worship on the Disciple Makers worship team. That has been amazing, and I just enjoy it so much, and I think that it really does make me closer to the Lord. And then I also have an audition coming up at my home church back home, so that's really exciting, and I would appreciate your prayers for that. The next thing that I learned was that taking a Sabbath is absolutely necessary. A lot of people don't really take a Sabbath anymore like they used to, like back in the Old Testament. And so we learned about the Sabbath in one of the Bible studies that I was in. At first we were learning about it, and I was like very, very convicted, like you need to take a Sabbath. But I was very rebellious and kind of in denial that Christians need to take a Sabbath, and I do believe now that it is necessary for every Christian to take a Sabbath. So we learned about it, I was asking a bunch of people about it, and once I actually started obeying what I felt the Lord wanted me to do and taking a Sabbath, it has just been amazing. I have never seen the Lord use me so much and grow me so much since I've been taking a Sabbath. At first, since I'm a college student, I thought that it would literally be impossible to take a Sabbath just because of how much work that we have. When I wasn't taking a Sabbath, I would just waste so much time throughout my studying and just not get it done in a good, timely manner. And it's really cool because now that I take a Sabbath, I get all of my work done throughout the week, and I feel a lot more joyous when I'm doing my work. And also just having that dedicated time to the Lord every week really shows him, I am setting this time aside for you, and I'm not going to do anything besides just be with you and be in fellowship with your people. I think that really pleases him. And I think it also shows him and other people, like, I desire the Lord more than education or work or anything, and I'm going to set this time aside for the Lord. And Sabbath isn't something that's super like strict for me. It is typically a 24-hour period, but I don't always do it on the same day. So sometimes I'll do it from Friday night to Saturday night. Sometimes I'll do it from Saturday night to Sunday night. Sometimes I'll do it from noon on Saturday to noon on Sunday. As long as I'm taking a chunk of time, personally for me, it doesn't really matter when that is, as long as I'm just taking it. The next thing I learned is that reading the Bible in a year is not for me. I went through this Bible study book that I got for Christmas last year, and it was reading the Bible in a year. I've never done that before, so I was like, oh, this would be fun, really enjoyable. On the book, it said that it was 15 to 20 minutes every day, and I would just read for 15 to 20 minutes the chapters, but I wouldn't retain anything. I wasn't trying to take notes, which I am a note taker, so taking notes when I'm reading my Bible is so essential, and if I don't take notes, I'm literally not going to remember anything. So that was what was happening, and I continued with the Bible in a year until August, and I was convicted about it so much throughout the summer, like, you should not be doing this, like, you need to slow down. And I just like wasn't listening to it. But then when I went back to school, I really desired to just know the Lord more, and my relationship was kind of not feeling very strong with the Lord at that point. And so I decided to take a break from that and just go slowly through the Bible. And that really, really benefited me. It took me a month to get through Romans. I feel like I gained so much more knowledge and relationship with God through that experience. It also makes me feel pressured to like read a certain amount of the Bible. And the whole point of the Bible is to get closer with Jesus. It's not to read a certain amount of it. And so I really felt that that was just like not for me. Another thing that I learned kind of on the same lines of what I was just talking about is I learned how I like to read the Bible. What I've been doing that Milena Ciciotti actually does, I love her YouTube channel. I'll link it down below so that you guys can check her out because she's awesome. But what she does is she reads the chapter that she's going to read that day, and then she goes through verse by verse, but she reads the verse above it and the verse below it to get context of what the verse in between is saying. And so I just love that idea because it's giving you context. And typically when I used to study the Bible, I would just go verse by verse without really knowing the context of the full chapter. I got a lot out of it, but not as much as I could, and it was kind of out of context, and it was more of my interpretation of what it's saying rather than what God's scripture is saying. The next thing is community. Community was such a big theme of this whole year, and just having those godly people to be around you when you're suffering and also when you're celebrating. My boyfriend Josiah and I were trying to find a home church, and it was really difficult for us to find a home church since I'm at school. So over the summer this year, we actually found a home church, and we've been going there, and it's been really, really awesome. And just the community that they have there, they love the Lord and they love people, which is exactly what we wanted in a church. And then I feel like I've just grown so much closer with my community at home and also in school. And I really just have a really tight-knit group where if I'm struggling with a sin or if I need to confess something, I can go to them. I went to one of my friends this semester because I had a sin that was really weighing on my heart, and she sat with me and I was able to confess to her, and I cried with her. She was just there to comfort me and encourage me in the scriptures. And then during that time, I was also texting my friends back at home, and they were sending me scripture and just praying over me. And I really would not be able to defeat any sin in my life if it wasn't for the community that I have and God, obviously. But I'm just like so grateful for all of the people that I have in my life. The next one is that the temptation of sin cannot be defeated by your own strength. And I feel like everyone hears this, but you don't really know what it means until you've walked through it yourself. Personally, for me, I knew that I wanted to desire the Lord more than I wanted to desire my sin, but I kept getting myself caught in this sin cycle that felt never ending. And I was like, Lord, I want you to be the Lord of my life, but I just feel like I keep falling into this and it's keeping me from a close relationship with you. And a heart change really has to come from God and from within. Personally, from my experience, I knew about boundaries. I knew that I had to pray about it. I knew that I should have been doing X, Y, and Z to reach this goal that I wanted to have. But if my heart wasn't in the right place, I was never going to reach that goal in the first place. And so just some practical things that I felt really helped me to make sure that my heart was treasuring the Lord was listening to worship on my drive to work, listening to one additional sermon throughout the week, praying to God in every single situation in your life. Trust me, you can be praying to God in every single moment of your day. And I just want to say that it didn't come very quickly for me. I knew that my heart needed to desire the Lord, but those practical tips and things just came with time. I didn't do all of them all at once, and I didn't desire to do all of them all at once. But once I did them, it really did change my heart posture, and it just created this passion and desire for the Lord that I wanted. The next thing that I learned was how to learn how to be present. This meant being able to sit in front of a campfire and watch the fire and listen to the crickets chirp. Crickets don't chirp. I don't know what crickets do, but anyway. I wanted to enjoy life without constantly distracting myself. And so sometimes I'll even leave my phone in a different room if I'm like around people or just want to be silent and just do something, because I know that if my phone is around, I'm gonna go on it if I'm not doing anything. I tried not to distract myself and instead become comfortable with just sitting in silence and having thoughts and thinking through things and just, I don't know. Over the summer, I sat in front of a campfire for an hour doing absolutely nothing besides looking at the campfire and listening to my surroundings and thinking about things. And it was such a peaceful and relaxing experience because I didn't have all of the chatter and the noise and the distraction of everything else going on in the world. And another thing that helped me come to realize this was I was over one of my mentors' house, Clint, because we were all just over his house because it was one of our Bible studies. Be Real went off while we were all in like the middle of this conversation, and everyone like pulled out their phones and like took pictures. And he said something that was super profound to me. He said all of them just stopped everything that they were doing because of a notification on their phone. And it really helped me realize, like, I do not want to be that person. I was just like, wow, what are we coming to? That we just, like, dropped an important conversation that we were having with someone that we loved so that we could take a picture on our phone. And it just, like, opened my eyes. And I don't think Be Real is a bad thing in itself. I think it's great for, like, creating memories. But just personally for me, I was like, I do not want to do that. The next thing that I learned was how to build relationships around the gospel and how to just lead people to Christ. I am on the leadership team of disciple makers at my school. And so we had a lot of training, and I learned alongside with that like, people that do this full time, like, they've had training. It's not like people are just born and they grow up and then they can just evangelize to everyone and, like, they know how to do everything for the gospel. That was really encouraging because I knew that, like, yes, in the form of leadership and leading people to Christ, like, I am a little baby, but I can grow and I can learn from those people to just become better. They said that they know that the Lord is really pleased that the students on leadership team are taking the time out of their week to share the gospel with people and meet up with people, and it really just showed me how to walk alongside someone as they're growing in their relationship with Christ, and I've just really enjoyed the experience, and I've learned a lot about that. I've learned how to incorporate scripture when you're talking to someone. One of the leaders was really encouraging, and he said, it's okay if you don't reach every single person that you talk to, because if you think about it, Jesus had 12 disciples, and he poured into those people. And obviously, like, he was perfect, so he did miracles and healings and things like that. But even out of his 12 disciples, one still strayed away. And so it wasn't that Jesus wasn't a great leader, it was just that Judas's heart was just not in the right place. And so we can't be too hard on ourselves when someone decides to step away from the faith or not be led by you anymore. The next thing that I learned was that I still struggle a lot with pride. I was reading John Pokluda's book. It's Why Do I Do What I Don't Want to Do, which is based off of the verses in Romans 7, which Romans 7 just, like, describes my life. I feel like that chapter is just, like, everything that I've gone through just wrapped up in a chapter, so I really encourage you guys to go read that chapter. But I was reading through his book, and he said, one thing to look for if you don't know if you struggle with pride is, do you tend to change conversations to be about you when someone is talking about themselves? And there is a way to do this in a way that's not prideful, but I felt like the way that I was doing it was. The book just helped me realize that I have some work to do with pride, and I feel like everyone does. The next one is entitlement, which I honestly didn't even know what this meant when I was reading through his book. I have realized that I complain about a lot of things because I feel like I deserve better, or if something doesn't go my way, then I complain about it. And a lot of that had to do with school. Like, I felt like I deserved a better grade or whatever, or I deserved better instruction in my classes. I believed that the weather should be warmer. I was complaining about how cold it was. Just like things like that I feel like I deserve when I don't. I don't deserve anything. The fact that I get to go to the school that I go to and have a great education and professors that care about me, that is more than I could have asked for. And so, again, I think that comes with pride as well, but just thinking that you deserve things that you don't. The next one is being a servant, and this is one that I'm still trying to work through and improve on, but just offering my help when someone needs it. And I have been able to practice this more through disciple makers at my school, just helping people clean up chairs or clean up the instruments after we're done, or giving someone my seat. Having a servant's heart is really important, especially when you're in a leadership position, and I've just learned a lot about that this year, and I will continue to learn about that next year. The next thing I learned is that the habits that I'm currently doing are going to prepare me so well for my future family and for my marriage and for my children. During my Sabbath one day, I was just worshiping, and I was, like, on my knees just kind of, like, praising the Lord, and I had this kind of, like, image pop into my head, and it was me, like, in the future in my home doing what I was doing in that moment, like getting down on my knees, praising the Lord, worshiping him. I had an image of, like, my children walking into the room and, like, seeing that, or, like, my husband walking in and seeing that. And it really just, like, encouraged me that the things that I'm doing now are going to set me up for the future, so that hopefully my relationship with the Lord will lead my children and my husband to want and desire a close relationship with the Lord. The next one is surrendering my plan. I am such a planner, And I feel like I'm constantly thinking about the future, which is like, it's honestly, it gets really annoying constantly thinking about the future, but that's always where my mind is at. And I'm really trying to learn to let go of that and not worry about the future, because obviously the Lord knows what my future is going to look like, and just kind of take it day by day. There has been so much over the last 2 years where, looking back now, I thought was going to be completely different. And it just reminds me that, yeah, I can try to plan for the future, but ultimately it's not in my hands, and things are going to work out in God's timing, and just to let that happen the way it's supposed to be. The next one is that God revealed to me a lot of idols in my life this year. And I never really realized that idolatry was a thing that I struggled with, but the Lord really refined my heart. One of my idols was clothing. I had so much clothing. It came to the point where I was just overwhelmed. And so my boyfriend and I went through my closet, went through everything. I got rid of a bunch of stuff, and he helped me kind of like let go of some stuff. And that was really beneficial, and I really encourage you to do that if you think that clothing is something that you are attached to. Another one was finances. This semester, I really wanted to get a job off campus. I have a job that makes a little bit of money on campus, but I really wanted to get like a waitressing job so that I could make a little bit of extra money, because I realized that I found a lot of my security in my finances and having a certain amount in the bank account. And I really had to just let that go. Ultimately, the Lord is the one that makes me secure, and I knew that He would provide for me. Not having a job really challenged me, because I was like, how am I going to get through this semester? And He got me through it. Also, not having a job allowed me to do so much more with ministry and with the club on campus. I got to meet up with some girls and do Bible studies with them, and I really just don't think I would have had the time to do that if I had a job. So I am just very thankful, and I see it as a gift. Another one was work. I am naturally an overworker. I tend to just work all the time, and I just don't stop. And so I really had to let go of that this semester. And I think implementing a Sabbath has really helped with that, because it shows God, like, I am putting away my work. I'm putting away all my schoolwork that I have to do, and I am resting in you. And even when I was applying for jobs, and even though it didn't work out, I had set aside that time, and I told them, like, I cannot work on Saturday or Sunday. Another one was just my education. I definitely put my grades above God. I would spend hours and hours working on my schoolwork instead of spending time with Him. And I do think it is important to work hard, and I don't necessarily think these things are bad, but when you put them above God, it is bad. So instead of putting my education and my work above God, as I'm doing schoolwork, I will pray to Him. I'll ask Him to equip me, just kind of like the things that I was talking about earlier. And I really don't have a desire anymore to be the best in my class like I used to in high school. I also really idolized beauty in general. So I have struggled with acne for a while now, and it started coming back this year. I had it under control for a while, and then it just started coming back. I was so hyper focused on it that I just like couldn't think of anything else, and I was like, I don't know why I'm breaking out. And I would use makeup to cover it up, and I would just like look at my face in the mirror for minutes at a time and just like examine my face and like my acne and stuff, and it was just really unhealthy. So for a while I actually had to stop wearing makeup, because I was like, this is just affecting me too much, and it would just cause so much like anxiety. And then regarding clothes, I didn't realize that I had an issue with this, but I feel like some of my clothes were revealing or like just too tight. I didn't really notice that this was an issue until I was at a conference and I was wearing these pants, and one of my friends made a comment, and they were like, oh my gosh, your butt looks so good in those pants. And I was like, that's not really the goal here, especially because we were at a Christian conference, and I was like, if she thinks that and she's telling me that, then imagine other people that are also thinking that as well. And then especially, like, I don't want to make anyone stumble in any way. So I got rid of those pants. I was super convicted about that. I also spent way too much time picking out my outfits. I remember this one time we were going to this garden with a bunch of friends, and it took me like 20 minutes to pick out an outfit, and then we went and we ended up getting pictures, and the one picture that I was in, I hated it because I looked fat. Probably Amazon. I hope that was Amazon. Scary. Yes, it was Amazon. I don't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, the one picture that I got, I thought I looked fat. So I was like, okay, I spent like 20 minutes picking an outfit and I don't even like this picture. So that was kind of just annoying, and it helped me realize, like, why am I spending so much time picking an outfit to look good for other people when the purpose of clothing is just to worship the Lord? Like, I should not be worrying about anything else other than how my body glorifies God. The next thing, which is huge for me, this is probably another big one, was just conquering sexual sin. Sexual sin has always been something that has been a burden on my heart, and it's always been something that I've struggled with the most. It's probably the one sin that's like at the top that just never seems to go away. This year, I had a moment where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, and I can't deal with this anymore. And I think that also came with just my heart posture. If your heart isn't in the right position, your desire for the Lord is not going to be more than your desire for the flesh. And so once I had that heart change, I was able to put that away, and I truly, truly desire the Lord more than I desire that now. And I haven't struggled with it for months now. And so that is just such a praise to the Lord. And I'm just so grateful that I'm out of that season of life. Since I surrendered that to the Lord and I said, I'm done with this, I feel like from that point, He was able to just refine me so much. And that's when I started realizing all that stuff about like idolatry and all of the things that were put in the way between me and my relationship with God. And I feel like my relationship now, because that's out of the way, is just so much greater. The next thing that I learned is that when you give your time to the Lord, He uses that. I really realized that through my Sabbath. So during my Sabbath, I typically worship, read my Bible, and pray. Those are like the main things that I do. And so I like to write down my prayers, and I'll just ask the Lord, like, if there's anyone that you want me to pray for, Lord, please just put them on my heart. And so through that, I just saw Him using me so much. I would pray for people in my journal, and then I would text them after saying like, hey, like, just letting you know, like, the Lord put you on my heart and I've been praying for you. And it was so cool to see the stories of people like, oh my gosh, like, it's so awesome that you're praying for me, like, I'm so grateful for that, or I didn't realize that someone was praying for me. Or one of my cousins, I texted her and I said, hey, I've been praying for you, and she was like, really? Like, about what? And we got to talk about how, like, she's been having like some revelations throughout her life. And so I'm excited to talk to her a little bit more about that as well. And it's so cool because when we surrender our time to the Lord and have faith in Him that He will use us, He uses us, and then that increases our faith because we see that He's working through us, and it's just so cool. It also just reminds me that prayer is so powerful and it works, and it is not something to take lightly. God is just constantly reminding me that prayer is key to everything. Last but not least, I learned to not put my hope in things that I'm expecting. So I worked for a PT clinic over the summer, and I was expecting to have that job over the winter and next summer and continue working there, but the owner actually filed for bankruptcy, and so that was like a whole situation. But that was kind of like, oh, I had my hope in working there, and now I don't have a job there anymore. So it's like, okay, well, that's kind of annoying. And then the whole other thing with working over the semester, I had blocked time out so that I could have a job. And then when I applied to several different places and didn't hear anything back from them, I was like, wow, this like really stinks. It was really cool because I saw God working in those areas of my life. With the PT place, like, I didn't get my last paycheck, but that was another surrender that was like, there's nothing I can do about it. And obviously the Lord knew that this was going to happen, and He's still going to provide for me even though I don't have that money. And so that was really cool to just see that and see how like the Lord used all those situations to just refine my heart. That is all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for just coming through this journey of reflecting on this year. It definitely has been a year of refinement, and I just thank the Lord so much and praise Him that I just had a wonderful year. I'll see you guys in my next video.